podcast. I'm Tim Niemeyer. I'm joined today by Mickey Koss. Mickey, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Mickey and I have known each other for a while through both writing for Bitcoin Magazine when he moved to Forbes, and also through Bitcoin Veterans. If you guys remember episode 1, Mike Hobart, same group right there. Mickey is a West Point graduate, 10-year Army veteran, spanning everything from conventional infantry to special operations, finance, and budget, which that could be a podcast on itself. I'd love to hear. He's a prolific writer, having published nearly 100 articles across venues like Forbes, Bitcoin Magazine, Bitcoin News, and currently Swan.com. He recently left the Army as a major to pursue Bitcoin full-time and is now the business operations manager at Sazmining, a retail-facing hosted mining company. Mickey, and you're also still a young guy, so that's quite a resume. I got to tell everybody, when I read that, when I was reading through like all the things that you've done, I had that like what is it, The Other Guys feel, where they're in the car and Will Ferrell's like slams on the gas and he screams America. I was loving that. That's amazing.
Yeah,
you man,
yeah, it feels like forever. But yeah, Army was pretty wild, man. We moved 6 or 7 times in like the first 7 years. So
wow,
it was a lot.
That's crazy. So you're like I said, you used to write Forbes. You're a prolific writer, but I kind of vaguely remember hearing saying that you didn't like want to be a writer. You know, you're an accidental writer almost. Is that right?
Yeah, never really intended to be a writer. So I got into Bitcoin in like 2020.
Yeah.
Got into a grad school program actually through the Army. And so I moved from Texas to New York to do grad school in Syracuse.
Cool.
So after I graduated, moved up here to Washington to do the special operations gig. I owed the Army some time because of grad school, and quickly realized that the special operations thing was probably the best job I would ever have, and it wasn't. Just wasn't that great.
It just wasn't.
Yeah, I mean the Army budget thing just kind of boring.
Really?
Wasn't really intellectually stimulating. Yeah, I didn't love it, but at the same time, like I get to wear stuff like this to work, so I wasn't in a uniform, no formations, none of that, and so it was like getting treated like a big boy made it so that I would never have been able to go back to like big Army and do all the uniforms and formations and stuff. So I was just bored at work one day. I accidentally found Bitcoin Mag submission, so I submitted a thing, and then just kept going. Maybe 9 months later, Forbes reached out through a friend. So started writing for Forbes, Bitcoin News.
Which, by the way, that writing for Forbes, you were one of, if not the first at Forbes, from my understanding, to be writing like pro Bitcoin pieces. There wasn't that back then. There wasn't that many positive articles coming out of what you'd call mainstream media, right?
Yeah, so I guess at Forbes you can't, like, I'm not directly advocating for Bitcoin. I like to think that I am just a writer who understands Bitcoin and doesn't write stupid things or bold-faced lies like the New York Times.
And at the same time, though, you were highlighting different industries with Bitcoiners in them, and how the life connections between Bitcoin and it was in a very positive light. So, advocate or not, it's like you said, it's not FUD. So right there, that was huge.
It's just sort of telling the truth. It's highlighting the truth, right?
What's that?
So yeah, it's just highlighting the truth. So like my whole strategy was like the faces of Bitcoin. That's sort of like my thing with Forbes. And so pick like Bitcoin theme, get like 2 to 4 Bitcoin companies or Bitcoin people, and just highlight all these cool things that's happening in the Bitcoin space in the context of like theme. So I had methane mitigation, like, oh, Bitcoin solving climate change, like,
it's telling the
things like
stories
that.
with other stories. Yeah, it's telling all the positives of Bitcoin while not really focusing directly on Bitcoin, not being the evangelist where knocking on the door and saying, hey, have you heard about the good word of Satoshi, right?
Yeah.
Nice. So then that leads you to which happened first, Sazmining or Swan? Because they happen around the same time, it seemed like.
Yeah, Swan happened slightly before that. So I was sort of in my last few months in the Army, just sort of networking with people, trying to find a job. And Swan, one of the guys at Swan, basically is like, hey man, you want to write blog posts for us? And I'm like, yeah, definitely,
Right on.
let's do it. So I've done maybe 6 with Swan. But sort of like the intent behind them is that to get, it's like an SEO type thing. So they're constantly updating them. So I wrote one maybe November, December, and it's already been like updated and the author changed and
Interesting.
stuff. So it's like those aren't necessarily endearing pieces. It's to hit like SEO to get Bitcoin companies towards the top of that Google search.
Right on. Well,
So
and
different kind.
I read your recent one on Bitcoin cold storage, and I dig that. And I actually forwarded that out to my Lincoln Land Bitcoin group because it hits everything. It hits all the points without like going way down the rabbit hole. You know what I mean? It's great. So I here at Zoom Out, we really focus on financial freedom and trying to not just come up with a definition that works kind of for everybody of financial freedom, but trying to understand, one, how people are being held back in financial freedom, and two, like how, for lack of a better term, Bitcoin fixes this, or at least Bitcoin incentivizes this, makes it easier to get towards financial freedom. Let's kind of start off with your conception of, like, if you were to just say what financial freedom is to you, what would you say?
Yeah, sure. It's just sort of getting beyond living paycheck to paycheck and being able to sort of plan out like a secure future where you're not, I guess you're not worried about finances. So you have them like consciously planned out, deliberately planned out, but you're not worried that you're gonna, miss your next bill, and then eventually getting to the point where you don't necessarily have to work anymore, and you can sort of just follow passions, sort of a soft retirement.
That kind of, as you're saying that, it's like financial freedom is kind of like on a scale. It's not like I'm not here and now I'm here. It's not, on or off. And it's kind of like about time preference. It's like, I need to pay this bill, which is, I need to eat. These are high time preference things. And the farther out we can spread out that window, Overton window, whatever you want to call it, of your own kind of time preference, you're getting further down that scale of financial freedom.
Yeah.
I love that.
And sort of on the baseline, it's just it's consuming less than you make, right? And so you have a surplus, right? And so the surplus, you can either become a part-time professional investor trying to get returns on your money, or you can just save your money in Bitcoin and just be lazy and risk averse like me.
I love that. And it works for everybody. Everybody's got their own way, right? So
Yeah.
what do you think, if we were to kind of focus in on Americans, middle age, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, what's holding them back? What's holding them back from financial freedom?
I think there's a lot of things. So there's a degree of discipline that I see that a lot of people just don't have. They think they have forever, and then forever sort of sneaks up on them, right? And so
Yeah.
there's a story, right? And it's just math. So if you take, let's say, $100 a month and invest it into like the S&P 500 from, let's say, age 16 to 30,
Mm-hmm.
and then do nothing and just let it sit there, you're going to have more money than you investing like $200 a month from age 30 to age 65 when you're trying to retire, because that's just compound interest. That's time in the market. That's the most important thing. And so a lot of people, I guess in my economics class, they call it hyperbolic discounting. And so people discount their future into nothing. And so they just sort of put it off forever, and then forever eventually comes. And then I think too is just sort of education. So markets are inherently sort of intimidating, and there's a lot of financial jargon. There's a lot of buzzwords, and it's just sort of intimidating. And so, you look at all of these choices, and it's sort of the paradox of choice, right? You go on to Netflix, there's 2,000 different shows to watch, and you end up scrolling through the menu for 45 minutes with your wife trying to decide.
Right. Analysis paralysis,
Yeah.
And that when it goes to that time preference, I mean, our most limited resource is our time, right? And the more you have to spend time on those things, yeah, go for it, man. I'm sorry, I'm stepping on you. You're jamming. I totally agree with that. I can totally see all of those angles. Well, you also have that special niche, the special viewpoint of being in the media. So the media doesn't really, in my estimation, help people achieve financial freedom. If anything, it helps give them distractions or like the next thing kind of idea, or it gives them excuses almost. Straw men, or not straw men, but being able to pick on somebody else, and that's my problem. That's what's holding me back, as opposed to, like you said, working hard and doing it yourself. What do you see the media really have a part in this financial freedom?
Yeah, so I think the media sort of does a lot of finger pointing, right? And so there's a lot of narratives where it's like victimizer, and it just alleviates people from taking responsibility for the circumstances of their life, right? And so, no matter what's going on, like if you make $5,000 a month and you're spending $6,000, there's a lot of things that can be done to take back the power for yourself. I don't know if this is like the appropriate time, but I wanted to show you this chart, which sort of contextualizes. So this is why the yuppie elite dismissed Bitcoin, from Jesse Myers. Yeah, and so I think the media, yeah, Cretius. Well, he goes by Jesse now. He's
That's correct.
The anon mask off. Yeah, so there's a lot of excuses that people get from the media on like why things are not their fault, right? And it's just a cultural problem. And so I think the media is sort of driving this cultural phenomenon where nobody has to take responsibility for anything, and it's sort of almost this flywheel of incentives to where people sort of give up responsibilities and freedom in exchange for like more handouts from the government. And I think that's sort of the path we're going on right now, and specifically the media, right? And so this chart, you can't see my mouse, but you can see it. Okay.
Yeah, I can see the chart.
So the y-axis is IQ. X-axis is trust in the system. And so people up here with high IQs and high trust in the system are not really going to like Bitcoin, because it's sort of this new phenomenon outside of the system. And so the media being sort of, like almost the fourth branch of government, right? They're sort of the voice box for the government. They're not going to like Bitcoin because they're part of the system. They inherently trust the system. And so
it's also feeding them, right?
Yeah. So like the media is not going to embrace Bitcoin writ large because they are part of the system and inherently trust the system, no matter their IQ. And so that's sort of how I see the media and Bitcoin and financial independence and
And that
responsibility interplaying.
and that goes back to like you're living in that, right? Because you're high IQ. I mean, you wouldn't have got to where you are, and with all your hard work, but you are also in the media, so you kind of were around all those people, right? Did you ever want to
No,
just like?
not really.
Did you ever want to just like Frankie? You remember the guy Frankie, the Bitcoin, like whatever his name, McDonald? Frank, is that right? You ever just want to like scream in a room, just Bitcoin really loud? No.
No, I think the writing is sort of like therapy in a sense like that, where I get to scream Bitcoin in more eloquent phrasing. But
Dig it.
so like the Forbes is sort of unique. I don't know how the other platforms work, but Forbes is just sort of a conglomeration of like independent contractors. So I have like an admin portal that I log into, and I write
Right on.
basically whatever I want.
Right on.
And then I edit it myself, and then I click publish. And so
So
the
they just give
editors
you the
don't
green light.
even, yeah.
Is all it
So the
is.
editors, yeah, the editors don't even look at what I write until I've already published it. And so what Forbes has done really well compared to like other places I've seen is that they specifically reached out to me because they wanted somebody who actually understood Bitcoin, so that
I
they
dig
could
that.
actually get quality Bitcoin content. And so Forbes is different.
Props to Forbes. I dig that. I'm gonna try and put them in the show notes and get them to give us some cash on the side. No, that's really awesome. That's really awesome. So aside from Forbes, the media, they're up there in that top right. And I love that image because to me, that gives you a visual representation. And anybody who's new to Bitcoin or bit curious or whatever you want to call it, you got to look at that chart and say, where are you? Where are your family members? Like where are the people that are giving you the information coming from and why? And that kind of awareness can help lead you maybe down a different path of financial freedom towards Bitcoin. Let's go there with Bitcoin. Obviously, everybody's elevator pitch is different, especially to who you're talking to, right? Is there a common thread that you find showing up in your somewhat personal Bitcoin elevator pitch if you're just out and about, friends, family, what have you?
Not necessarily. I try to meet people where they are.
Love that.
So sort of older people, I'll talk about how it's gold 2.0,
Sure.
right? That's a good contextualization for older folks. For younger people, sort of like it's a better way to save, so you don't have to invest. Things like that. And
Saving the time.
something
Yeah.
Something I found also is that other people, a significant amount of people don't even realize that the dollar isn't backed by gold anymore. Yeah. And I mean, it's been 53 years, right? Since we broke from the gold standard, the dollar's backed by nothing. And a lot of people's criticism is that Bitcoin's backed by nothing. And so, just things like that. And then they, they'll talk about like, oh, it just went down, right? And like, well, it's going up forever, it's trending towards infinity. Just little bits like that where it's like,
Right.
what? Like, how does that work? Just try to hook the interest. I've gotten a couple people like that, but it's really a test in, I wouldn't call it, people call it an IQ test. I wouldn't necessarily call it that. I would call it more of an intellectual curiosity or a humility test.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, I had a coworker. He said something about Bitcoin to me. I answered his question. I told him I wrote about Bitcoin for Forbes, and then he went on like a 5-minute rant about, oh, he's so sorry I bought Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is going to get replaced by, whatever, and this and that. And it's like, he's not going to get it because he lacks humility. I just told you I write about Bitcoin for Forbes, and then you tell me about all these things you think you know about Bitcoin. So, if you don't have humility or curiosity, it's just, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Well, you're working with Sazmining now. I assume as business operations manager, you're working with people who either know about Bitcoin or at least have the humility, or like you said, that intellectual curiosity, and are trying to learn more. How much of your job do you find yourself like still teaching or explaining, through like you do with your articles?
Oh, like 0%. No, they're all rabid maxis. They're all well
Oh, dude.
versed in Bitcoin. So
Right
we
on.
don't we hardly even talk about Bitcoin actually, because we're just so busy trying to get business operations refined.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, so out of all of this, I'm trying to put this all together because we kind of crossed a lot of topics. Do you have any do you have anything not holding you back, but like any family members or friends that are just like still not getting it? Are they the people that, and I'm not trying to out you to your family, but that are having those like things holding them back, whether it's the humility or whether it's the intellectual curiosity? Because I know personally, I have people near and dear to me that you can't say it loud enough or right enough, and they're never going to get it. And those are the people you want to help. You know what I mean? Do you have any of that going on?
When I was still in the army a few months back, there was coworkers. They would joke about it frequently. Um, Sort of less frequently since it ran up from 16,000
Yeah,
to
yeah,
like 50.
150%.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so it's less so. So mostly peers at my old job would sort of poke fun at it. Um, People would occasionally come and ask me about it, but I've sort of stopped evangelizing. Um, because it just, most people, like, you waste a lot of time like talking to them. They'll talk to you for hours if you let them, and then there's no action, there's no follow-up, right?
Hmm.
And so sort of I guess the way is like, hey, give them something to read and then tell them to come back to you with questions. Or if they want to buy it, give them like a referral link to River and tell them, like, if they set up their account, you'll send them a couple dollars over Lightning or something to show them how it works. And so I've trying to manage my time better, where I'm not necessarily taking 30 minutes to like 2 hours discussing Bitcoin in depth with people, but sort of giving them some relatively low hurdles to jump over in order to go deeper. And most people don't jump the hurdle. So
Well, but what you're also doing is, like we talked earlier, that you're recognizing their biggest problem. It's that time commitment, the difficulty level. You're lowering that bar to jump over by not evangelizing, by giving them that referral link, and saying I'll send a few sats, and just from 0 to 1, right? We're not going from 0 to anything higher. You just got to give them a little nudge in the right direction. I dig that.
yeah.
With education, with your articles. Mickey, this has been great. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you hopping on a call at the end of the day, being slammed with meetings. I love it. I love that I love your hustle. Is there anywhere you want to shout out to or hand off to before we wrap up?
Um, yeah, I guess Bitcoin veterans here. So they have a
Yes.
group on Twitter, which I believe you're a part of as well.
Yes, sir.
They're doing a lot of good things. The one that stands out in particular is Operation Bitcoin, from Gabe Lord, and it's sort of a new partnership he's building to where it sort of teach, train, mentor veterans in the Bitcoin space. And then also it's a growing like job training and networking to try to help get veterans into the Bitcoin space, because there's a lot of companies. So like scrappy startup like Sazmining, it's like 12 people,
Mm,
including me. So it's not a big company, right?
yeah.
Um, and so scrappy startups sort of just start and then they start growing, And it becomes imperative at a certain point to get somebody with some semblance of like organization skills and discipline in there. And so that's basically what Sazmining hired me to do, is just sort of review all of their systems and processes and get some more organization in place, so that the business can run smoother. So that's something that probably most veterans are pretty good at. And so I think Operation Bitcoin and Gabe Lord are doing a lot of great work, and they're going to bring a lot of veterans into the Bitcoin space.
I love that. And you're also you're right for Swan, and you're also on Twitter, Plebeius Economus, which I love the name. Great job.
Yeah, I don't post often, mostly just putting out my articles.
Sure.
Really, I don't like social media very much. Too much fighting and stuff. So
True.
Yeah, I try to stay away.
Well, I love it because you practice what you preach. You're respecting your time, and you're cutting out all the BS and trying to extend your time preference forward for that financial freedom. Mickey, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for giving us your time. I look forward to reading more from you and seeing how Sazmining grows. Thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks.